Hello, it's Bailey and welcome back to my channel. I'm here today with my May wrap up. May was my smallest reading month of the year so far, but I did still read 6 books. So let's go ahead and start this wrap up firstly with what I bought in the month of May. So firstly, we went on a little camping trip like 2 hours from here, and we were in like a cute little town that did have a bookstore there. And so while we were there, I did purchase 3 books. This was a pretty spendy bookstore. It was like full price. But while we were there, I picked up one thing that I picked myself, and then I actually just asked the gal who was working. I was like, hey, what have you read recently that you would recommend? So I took 2 of her recommendations, and her recommendations were The Lager Queen of Minnesota by J. Ryan Stradal and Iron Lake by William Kent Kruger. And then what I picked for myself was And Every Morning the Way Home Gets Longer and Longer by Fredrik Backman. You'll see I did read this month. It's a very short book. I read this in like 20 minutes. And I don't have my receipt from here, so I don't know what each was individually, but my total for these 3 books was $77.41. So they were pretty pricey books, but I'm happy to support. Like, it was a small independent bookstore, and I had a good time chatting with the bookseller that was working, so this was a fun trip. And then I did something silly. Some of you are probably gonna scream at me for this, but I accidentally bought You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty by Akwaeke Emezi. I accidentally bought it twice. So this is not the first time this has happened to me. I don't know why it keeps happening. My bad. Firstly, what happened was I happened to be out of town on book release Tuesday. So I was like, oh, I need to buy this because if you missed it, my 5-star picks my TBR for April, I read Ryland's books, and she had read an arc of this, but I didn't have access to that arc. So I told myself that I had to pre-order it, but then in my mind I was like, I forgot to pre-order that. So I was at the bookstore on book release Tuesday, the day this was released, and just picked up a copy. But then apparently I did pre-order it. So then this also showed up. So for my pre-order, I had spent $22.89 on a copy, and then when I was in store and bought it, I spent $29.13 on another copy. I will be immediately selling one of these copies, but I still think I should have to count this money because that was really not very bright of me. And then if you didn't know, I am starting a like pop-up used bookstore, so I've been acquiring books for that, but sometimes I want to keep some stuff for myself. So these I actually bought in like a bundle from a seller, and it came with a lot of other books, but these are what I'm gonna keep for myself to read. So the math I did on what each of what these 4 books probably cost me was $9.30. So these were very cheap for me to acquire. The first being My Grandmother Asked Me to Tell You She's Sorry by Fredrik Backman. And then I have a couple of Lisa Kleypas books. I have Mine Till Midnight by Lisa Kleypas, which looks like brand new. And then A Wallflower Christmas by Lisa Kleypas. And then lastly, I have The Devil in Her Bed by Kerrigan Byrne. So in total, in the month of May, I spent $138.23. We will be due after the end of June to do another quarterly wrap up on my spending. So we're gonna have to come to terms with that then. Now to get into my stats, like I said, I read 6 books in the month of May, which was 19 hours of physical reading time, 1,277 pages, and my average reading speed per hour was 67.2 pages an hour. That is a little slow for me, but it's not my slowest month of the year, so there's that. And I listened to 10 hours of audiobooks. I only listened to 1 audiobook this month, so there's that. My breakdown was 4 physical books, 1 audiobook, and 1 ebook. 4 of these books I owned previously, 1 I acquired through the month, and 1 was an ARC. I had 5 adult and 1 YA. 1 book was a 2022 release. 2 were published in either 2020 or 2021, so recent backlist, and then 3 were published from 2010 to 2019. I read 33% authors of color. I had 2 romances, 2 mystery, a historical, and a contemporary. For my rating breakdown, I had 2 2-stars, 1 3-star, 1 4-star, and 2 5-stars, making my average rating for the month a 3.75. So now to get into the books and what I thought of them, I am going to go in my usual order of my least favorite to my most favorite. Starting with, sadly, the Shelf This book club pick for the month, which was Portrait of a Thief by Grace D. Lee. This is a heist novel following Chinese American young adults stealing back some art from different places to bring back to China. And overall, what heist? Like, there was no actual... The heist scenes were not done well, and the characterization I really struggled with in this book. All the characters kind of felt the same to me, and I have said before in my written review and in the discussion of this book for book club that I think that this would have worked better with the rotating perspectives had it been written in first person rather than third. And then my other 2-star was Behind Her Eyes by Sarah Pinborough. This is a mystery thriller book in which the plot twist at the end is pretty polarizing. Unfortunately, I didn't necessarily love it. Other than that, I don't really have much to say about this. It's a domestic thriller. My 3-star book was my audiobook for the month, but also like kind of a surprising book for me. I was happy to give this 3 stars, and it was The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Penner. I picked this up because as a book of the month member, I got to choose one of the book of the year finalists to get for free, and this at the time was the only one I didn't already have or hadn't read. So I added it to my cart. It was free, and I was like, I'll get to it eventually. So I did download the audiobook, and this is about a apothecary shop. We're getting like a perspective from the past and then a perspective from the present. So you're learning about the apothecary shop in the past, and the woman who runs it essentially gives poisons to people to kill like abusive husbands, bad men, and you soon find out that somebody is asking for a poison to kill a woman, and she really doesn't want to provide that. And then there's stuff that happens. It's kind of unresolved in the time period, like the previous time period, and so the perspective we're getting in the current time period is this like journalist figuring out what actually happened. And while this isn't like my usual thing, like I said, I gave it 3 stars. It was an enjoyable time, a pretty quick audiobook. Like I said, I think the audiobook was 10 hours, so I listened to it faster than that. I think if you like the witchy vibes, you would definitely love this one more than I personally did. And then my 4-star book, I'm so happy I finally got to. I've been sitting on this for a little while, and it was a really quick read. I read this during Amy's 48-hour Game of Bookish Life readathon because the prompt less than 300 pages came up, and so I read Blackout. It's put together by Danielle Clayton, but includes stories from Danielle Clayton, Tiffany D. Jackson, Nick Stone, Angie Thomas, Ashley Wood Folk, and Nicola Yoon. And this centers around Black love and Black teenagers during a blackout in New York City. And all of the stories are kind of connected. There's characters that connect each, but they are their individual stories. Tiffany D. Jackson's story kind of threads throughout the whole thing, and everyone else really just gets one chapter. And luckily, Tiffany D. Jackson's, that was the most prominent in here, was my favorite one. I do think that these authors are creating another book like this, like a joined project, so I'm excited to try that one as well, and this one was a 4-star for me. And then my 2 5-stars, starting with And Every Morning the Way Home Gets Longer and Longer by Fredrik Backman. I am a huge Fredrik Backman fan, and this story is just so endearing. If you haven't heard what this one is about, it is a grandfather talking to his grandson about his kind of progression into Alzheimer's, and he's slowly forgetting things and not remembering things. And while it is a super sweet story between the grandfather and the grandson, what really warmed my heart in this book is how the grandfather talks about his wife who has already passed, and how he talks about that relationship with his wife to his grandson. And if you want to get in your feelings a little bit, probably read this one. Sorry, Huck is barking a little bit. I think my packages are getting delivered, so I can't even really be mad. But lastly here, my favorite book of the month, to nobody's surprise, is a historical romance. And a historical romance in a series that I have loved every book in it so far, and it was The Wallflower Wager by Tessa Dare. I actually also started this one for the 48-hour Game of Bookish Life for the prompt of Animal Companion. The main female character in this basically collects a lot of animals. She is in town in London, and the male love interest purchases the house next door to her because he thinks that it's gonna sell well because she is a single woman living next to him, and so people will want to purchase this to live next to this like aristocratic single woman. But he's like, the animals have to go. Like, nobody's gonna want to live next to this funny farm. The animals have to go. And so throughout the story, they basically just end up interacting with each other more as neighbors, and it obviously escalates, and I really enjoyed this one. I know that the 4th book in this series keeps getting like pushed back. It had a release date, and then now it's pushed back to like 2024. So hopefully it comes sooner than that. Not sure what Tessa Dare is working on, but I definitely need to continue to read more of her work, and hopefully we will get the Bride Bet eventually. But that was my month of May. Overall, pretty good, even though 6 books is a little low for me. A lot of people don't read that much, so I'm very happy with how my month went. I hope to be back in June with maybe a touch bit more reading. My store opens in June, so we'll just see how it goes, kind of playing it by ear at this point. But thank you so much for spending some time with me today, and I will see you again very soon. Bye.